75 years. That's how long it took me to finally understand what truly matters in this life. And I'll tell you something right now. Nobody warned me. Nobody sat me down and said, "Listen carefully, because the clock is already ticking." I made mistakes that cost me years of joy, years of peace, years of connection. So if you're watching this, whether you're 60, 70, or even 80, I'm begging you, don't waste another single day living the way I did. What I'm about to share with you are the 13 lessons I wish someone had told me decades ago. And the most important ones, they start right here. I spent 30 years saying, one day I'll do it. One day I'll visit my brother. One day I'll apologize to the people I hurt. One day I'll slow down, breathe, and actually enjoy the life I worked so hard to build. I kept telling myself that the timing wasn't right yet, that things needed to settle down first, that once the children finished school, once the mortgage was paid, once work got a little lighter, then I would live the life I always meant to live. But here's the painful truth nobody tells you when you're young and full of reasons to wait. Time does not pause while you're getting ready. It doesn't hold its breath out of courtesy. It moves, quietly, consistently, and without a single apology. And one morning you wake up, and the brother you meant to visit is now just a voice on a phone call you keep rescheduling. The apology you rehearsed 100 times in your head was never spoken out loud. The rest you promised yourself, it never came. Because the conditions were never perfect. They never are. I remember standing in my garden one evening, must have been about 15 years ago now, watching the sun go down and thinking to myself, I'll sit here and do this properly tomorrow. I'm too tired tonight. I went inside. The next evening, it rained. The evening after that, something else came up. That sunset I was going to properly enjoy. I never went back for it. That might sound like a small thing, but multiply that by 30 years, and you start to understand exactly how a life gets away from you, not in one dramatic moment, but in thousands of quiet postponements. At my age, I've sat with enough people in their final weeks to know what they talk about, and I promise you, not one of them said they wished they had worked more hours, worried more, or waited longer. Every single one of them talked about the things they kept pushing forward, the places they never went, the words they never said, the hands they never held long enough. So whatever it is you've been putting off, do it now, not next Monday, not when the season changes, not when everything lines up perfectly, because it will not line up perfectly. Make the call today, book the trip today, say I love you today. Sit in the garden and watch the sun go down, today. The right time was never coming. It was always right now. It has always only ever been right now. And once you've made peace with the idea that today is the only time you truly have, the very next thing you must protect, with everything you've got, is the body that carries you through it. I didn't always think that way. Not even close. When I was younger, I wore exhaustion like a badge of honor. I worked through illness. I skipped meals. I pushed past pain and called it discipline. I genuinely believed that rest was something you earned only after everything else was finished. And of course, everything else was never finished. So rest never came. And my body, patient as it was, kept a quiet record of every single time I ignored it. The mornings now remind me. My knees remind me when I stand up too fast. My back reminds me of every heavy thing I carried without asking for help. My eyes remind me of every night I traded sleep for worry. These are not complaints. They are receipts. Bills that arrived late but arrived in full, for a debt I accumulated across decades of not listening. And here is what breaks my heart a little. When I sit and think about it honestly, my body never once abandoned me. Through every hardship, every season, every storm I walked through, it showed up, it healed, it adapted. It kept going even when I gave it very little reason to. It carried my children when they were small. It danced at celebrations I barely remember now. It sat beside hospital beds and held hands through the long nights. It did all of that, and I thanked it with neglect. At this stage of life, taking care of your body is no longer optional. It is the foundation of everything else on this list. You cannot forgive anyone if the bitterness is eating you from the inside out. You cannot sit around a table with the people you love if you cannot get out of bed to join them. You cannot choose peace every morning if your body is suffering from years of being ignored. Everything begins with how well you care for this one vessel you were given. So drink the water, take the walk, even if it is just to the end of the street and back. Sleep without guilt, eat with intention, see the doctor when something doesn't feel right, instead of hoping it quietly disappears. Listen to what your body whispers before it is forced to scream. It has been loyal to you your entire life. The least you can do, in whatever time remains, is finally return the favor. And after you have made the decision to show up for today, and after you have committed to caring for the body that carries you, there is one more weight that so many of us are still dragging behind us, quietly, invisibly, every single day. And it is heavier than anything your body was ever asked to carry. It is the weight of unforgiven people, of old wounds kept alive by memory, of anger that has been tended to so carefully for so long that it starts to feel like a part of who you are. I know that weight. I carried it for 11 years. There was someone in my life, someone who was once very close to me, who did something that cut deep. And I made a decision in the heat of that hurt, that I was done, that I would not forgive, that they did not deserve my forgiveness, and I was going to make sure they knew it through my silence. And for 11 years, I kept that promise to myself. I stayed silent. I stayed away. I held that boundary like it was something noble. But here is what I did not understand back then, and what I want you to truly hear right now. Every single day that I refused to forgive, I was not punishing them. They were living their life. They were laughing at dinner tables, watching their grandchildren grow, moving forward in ways I could not see and refused to acknowledge. The only person sitting in that prison of resentment was me. I built the walls, I locked the door, and I swallowed the key and called it strength. It was not strength. It was suffering dressed up in pride. Forgiveness does not mean you are saying what happened was acceptable. It does not mean you forget. It does not mean you open the door and pretend the hurt never existed. Forgiveness simply means you stop allowing that old wound to have authority over your present peace. It means you look at the years you still have ahead of you and you decide, consciously, deliberately, that those years will not be governed by something that happened in the past. I stood at a graveside. I held a resentment that had nowhere left to go. And in that moment, I understood completely what 11 years of unforgiveness had truly cost me. Not him, me. Whatever you are holding on to tonight, whoever it is, whatever they did, I am asking you, from the bottom of 75 years of living, to put it down. Not for them, never for them, for you, for your peace, for the mornings you still have left. And once you have put down the weight of unforgiveness, once you have freed yourself from that invisible prison, you will suddenly find yourself with something extraordinarily precious. Space. Space in your heart, space in your mind, space in your days. And the question then becomes, what do you fill that space with? What do you turn toward when you finally stop turning away? I'll tell you what I turned toward, and it took me far too long to get there. I spent the better part of my working life chasing things that glittered: money, status, the respect of people whose names I can barely remember now. I wanted a bigger house, a better car, a title that made me sound important at dinner parties. And I worked for those things with a dedication that, if I am being completely honest with you, I never gave to the people who actually loved me. My family got what was left of me after everything else had taken its share. And what was left most evenings was very little. I remember a particular summer. My grandchildren were visiting for the week. Young, loud, full of life in that way that only children can be. And I spent 3 of those 7 days on the telephone dealing with something at work that, I promise you, I cannot even recall today. 3 days, gone. And those children grew up. They grew up and became busy with their own lives, the way children do, the way they are supposed to. But those 3 days, I never got them back. No amount of money, no professional achievement, no title ever handed me back those 3 days. Here is what I know now, with the kind of certainty that only age can give you. The people around your table, the ones who show up when you are sick, who call just to hear your voice, who remember your birthday, not because a phone reminded them, but because you matter to them. Those people are your real wealth. They are the return on the only investment that never loses its value. Relationships are living things. They need attention. They need time. They need you to put down whatever else you are holding and simply be present, fully, warmly, without one eye on the clock. A kind word costs nothing and is remembered for decades. A shared meal, an unhurried conversation, a hand held in a quiet moment. These are the things people carry with them long after you are gone. No bank account follows you to the end. But love does. The kindness you planted in the people around you, that grows long after the season of your life has passed. And when you have learned to treasure the people around your table, when you have started measuring your life not in possessions but in presence, something else begins to surface. Something that has been sitting quietly in the background this whole time, waiting for a moment of stillness to make itself known. It doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives in the silence just before sleep. It arrives on slow Sunday afternoons when the house is quiet and the mind finally has room to wander. It arrives uninvited, and it stays longer than any guest you ever welcomed through your front door. It is regret. And I want to talk about it honestly, because I think we do people a great disservice when we pretend it isn't there, when we dress it up in polite language or push it aside with cheerful distraction. Regret is real. It is one of the most human things there is. And at this age, if you tell me you have none, I will gently suggest you haven't been paying close enough attention. I have my own. I have looked at them long and hard enough to know exactly what shape they take. They are not the dramatic failures you might expect. They are not the big, obvious mistakes that announce themselves in the moment. No, the deepest regrets are the quiet ones. The dream you talked yourself out of before anyone else even had the chance to discourage you. The path you didn't take because you were too afraid of what people might say. The version of yourself you kept locked away because the world around you seemed to prefer a safer, smaller, more agreeable version. I buried a dream once. Buried it so deep and so early that I almost convinced myself I had never wanted it at all. I told myself it was impractical. I told myself it was too late, that the moment had passed, that responsible people didn't chase things like that. And so I let it go. And for decades it said nothing. But in the quiet, in those long, honest hours that come with age, it speaks. Not with anger, just with a kind of gentle, persistent sorrow that asks the same question over and over. What if you had simply tried? That question is the most expensive thing I have ever owned. Because unlike everything else in this life, you cannot sell it, donate it, or leave it behind. It travels with you. So I am asking you, right now, today, while you still have days ahead of you that belong entirely to you? What have you been postponing out of fear? What dream have you been quietly apologizing for wanting? What word, what action, what beginning have you been waiting on permission to pursue? You do not need permission. You never did. The only thing standing between you and that unlived chapter is the decision to finally begin it. Key point 6. Expanded, 450 words. Evergreen wisdom. And after everything we have walked through together today, after choosing to show up for the present moment, after honoring the body that has carried you faithfully, after releasing the burden of unforgiveness, after turning toward the people who truly matter, after finally giving yourself permission to pursue what you buried out of fear, there is one final thing, one thread that runs quietly through every single lesson we have shared today, and without it, none of the others can fully take root. It is peace. And I need you to understand something about it that took me the better part of a lifetime to learn. Peace is not a reward. It is not something that arrives on its own after the storms have passed and the debts are settled and the children are sorted and the world has finally decided to cooperate. I waited for it to arrive that way. I genuinely believed that peace was the natural result of everything eventually working out. So I kept waiting. I waited through my 40s, my 50s, my 60s, always certain that the next chapter would be the quieter one, the calmer one, the one where I could finally exhale. It never arrived on its own, because peace was never waiting for my circumstances to change. It was waiting for me to change. The morning I understood that, truly understood it, not just as a pleasant idea, but as a living, breathing truth I could actually use, everything shifted. I stopped looking outward for something that had always been an inward choice. I began each morning not by cataloging what was wrong or what was missing or what still hadn't healed, but by finding, deliberately, sometimes stubbornly, one thing that was still good, still standing, still worthy of gratitude. Some mornings that list was very short. Some mornings it was just the light coming through the window, or the warmth of a cup of tea between my hands, or the simple fact that I had woken up at all when so many others had not. But I found it. Every morning I found it. And over time, that small daily practice of choosing gratitude over grievance, presence over worry, enough over not enough, it quietly rebuilt something inside me that years of waiting had slowly worn down. That is what peace actually is. It is not the absence of difficulty. It is the decision, made fresh every single morning, to not let difficulty have the final word. It is choosing, in spite of everything, to find the light, to sit in it, to be genuinely, humbly, wholeheartedly grateful for the life that is still yours to live. At 75, I am not who I was. I am slower, yes, I am quieter, but I am more at peace than I have ever been in my entire life. And that peace did not come from everything going right. It came from finally deciding that enough was enough, that I had suffered the absence of peace for long enough, and that whatever days remained to me would be lived differently. That decision is available to you too, right now, today, not tomorrow, not when things improve, not when the world becomes kinder or the pain becomes lighter. Today, exactly as things are, you can choose peace. If this spoke to something deep inside you today, share it with someone who is still waiting for peace to find them. And subscribe to Evergreen Wisdom, because choosing peace is not weakness, it is the highest form of wisdom, and you deserve to carry it with you every single step of the way. I've lived long enough to know that wisdom doesn't come from reading books. It comes from scars, from loss, from love, from all the mornings you didn't think you'd make it through and somehow did. If there is one thing I want you to take from everything I've said today, it is this. You are not too old to change, to heal, to love, or to begin again. The years ahead of you, however many they still belong to you. Don't give them away to bitterness, to fear, or to silence. Live them loudly, warmly, and without apology. Because this life, this beautiful, painful, magnificent life, it was always worth showing up for, every single day of it.